Alright, this is part 5 of the complete history. So we left off on, I think, this paragraph right here. Before we get started, I did change the formatting a little bit because I'm doing this on a Windows. I was doing this on my MacBook, but the fan on the MacBook just started sounding like a jet engine, so I had to think about other solutions because my microphone's not that good at getting the sound quality, just because I don't have a good microphone to begin with. So let's get started right here. Okay. Excuse me. This river hath in former times caused great desolation in China. So the Yellow River, right? Yeah. So a lot of flooding. They are still forced to keep up the waters by strong banks, which are constantly repaired with great care, notwithstanding which the inhabitants of the cities thereabout are often under apprehensions of being overwhelmed. They likewise have been careful in the province of Honan, the ground lying very low thereabouts, to surround the greatest part of the cities, about a mile from the walls, with a terrace cased with turf, to prevent being surprised by accidents and casualties in case the bank should be broken down, as happened about 80 years ago. That was like in the excuse me, in like the 1600s or so. Probably happened. So Yellow River probably was hard to control. I've read about that. That in ancient times that they had to build all these canals and whatnot, because it would just get like a lot of flooding, and they're like, should we build dams? No, that's not a good solution. We should build more canals to separate the flooding, and so those canals don't really fill up too much. I think they go over that in this book. Pretty sure. The emperor, endeavoring to force a rebel to raise the siege he had for a long time laid to the city of Honan, caused one part of the banks to be broken down, thereby to drown the besiegers. Dang. But the relief he afforded the city proved more fatal than the enemy would have been. The whole province almost was laid under water, together with many cities and villages in abundance. There perished above 300,000 people in that metropolis. Okay, so if that guy took that area over, I don't think he'd get much support. He just completely destroyed the city. Oh, that's not a good way to take over. Dang. Well, China is furnished with many other rivers of less note, but yet more commodious for trade and commerce. Besides which, there is likewise in every province one grand canal, which serves as a high road, the banks whereof are lined with great square stones of coarse marble, upon which the people walk to tow their boats along. They are generally of a clear, deep-running water, gliding along softly that it can scarcely be perceived. From each great canal are cut several smaller, which are again branched out again into rivulets that generally end at some town or village. They have also the conveniency of a great many bridges for necessary communication with the opposite shores, containing of 3, 5, and sometimes 7 arches, and the middlemost being always extraordinarily high, so that the boats may pass through without lowering or striking their masts. The arches are built of marble, very well framed, the supporters well fitted, and the piles so small that at a distance they would be imagined to hang in the air. These are frequently met with, not being far asunder, and the canals, being straight as they usually are, make a beautiful prospect, both stately and agreeably. The canals discharge themselves into the lake or great pond, out of which the adjacent country is watered, so that these clear and plentiful streams embellished by so many fine bridges, bounded by such neat and convenient banks, which serve as so many, causeways? I can't read that word. Equally distributed into such vast plains covered with a numerous multitude of boats and barges sailing different ways, and crowned, if I may be allowed the expression, with a prodigious number of cities, towns, and villages seated upon the banks whose ditches are filled, and whose streets are thereby formed, which does at once make that country the most fruitful and beautiful in the world. Europe, we are well assured, that has nothing to boast comparable to it. Okay, so sorry for adding a bunch of dumb words that aren't even in this book, but sometimes the language is kind of like, it's hard to flow out of my mouth because it's just so old. So I want to say things like the way I want to say it, but the language is older, so it's going to be different, alright, because it's just not my dialect. The Chinese say their country formerly was totally overflowed, and that by main labor and great industry they drained the water by cutting it away through these useful canals, which it true and boldness and industry of their workmen is very much to be admired, who have thus made great artificial rivers, and of a kind of a sea, as it were, created the most fertile plains in the world. Yeah, I guess that's really true. They do have a lot of rivers and a lot of crops, and their culture is like kind of surrounded by farming and stuff like that. I think I've listened to I forget whose podcast on Spotify. It's called The History of China. It's like the first one that comes up, and he talks about how the farmers were kind of like they were looked after a lot. You know, it was really important to be a farmer. You get a huge farming culture out here, so that's something to keep in mind as we're reading this too. So the next paragraph: among all those canals in the southern provinces, one above the rest is called the Great Canal, because it runs through the whole country from Canton, the southernmost province of China, to Peking, or Beijing, the imperial city in the north. You must only travel a short day's journey by land to cross the hill Moylan that bounds the province of Kiamshi. From this mountain is something two rivers. One runs southward to the sea, and the other northwards as far as the river Nanking, whence by the Yellow River and several canals you may proceed by water even to the very mountains of Tartary. Really? They can go up the mountains? In this great tract of land, the ground not being always level, a descent being wanted proportionable to the flowing of the waters. To supply this defect, instead of sluices, which I really don't. What are sluices? Oh wait, hold on. Let me use this keyboard. Sorry about that. What are sluices? Hopefully I'm spelling that right. A channel often equipped with a gate or a valve used to control the flow of water. Oh. That's the word we don't really use much anymore. Sluice gates are barriers used in water channels to control the flow of water, often found in dams or flood control system. Oh, okay, so yeah, it's like a releasing little valve of water. That's kind of smart. Okay, oh shoot, I lost where we're at. Frick. Oh, instead of sluices, there are great waterfalls or torrents, more or less rapid according to the difference of the level, precipitated from one canal to another. So Would they just make waterfalls and just like have it just flow off to the next thing? How do they travel on boats? Or maybe, oh, I guess that gate opens. I don't really know. I'm trying to visualize this, but I don't want to spend too much time like thinking about it. I mean, like waterfalls, like how are they gonna travel through that? Now, to cause the barks to ascend, they make use of a great number of men who are maintained for that purpose near the waterfalls to draw up the vessels which go against the stream. Yeah, that would make sense if they're flowing downwards. They have several captains upon the banks. After they have fastened the cables round the vessel, they raise it little by little till they have brought it into the upper canal, in a condition to continue its voyage, whither it is bound. This method of theirs is very tedious, attended with great toil, and exceedingly dangerous. They would be wonderfully surprised should they behold what easiness one man alone, who opens and shuts the gates of our sluices, makes the longest and heaviest laden barks securely to ascend and descend. So these guys like fasten cables to the side of the rivers and pull them up. These guys are freaking nuts. Dang. I mean, that's one way to go about moving the vessel upwards, but really? Like, in some places, the waters of two canals have no communication, yet for all they make the boats pass from one another, notwithstanding the level of one is 15 foot above the other, and this is the way they go to work. At the end of the canal they have built a double glaus or sloping bank of free stone, which uniting at the point extends itself on both sides up to the surface of the water. When the bark is in the lower channel, they hoist it up by help of the captains to the plane of the something, I can't read that, so far till being raised to the point it falls back again on its own by its own weight along the second glacis. I don't know what this word is. I don't know why they're printing so bad on this word. Into the water of the upper channel, where it shoots away a pretty while like an arrow out of a bow, and they make it descend after the same manner proportionably. The barks being commonly very long and heavy laden, 'tis a wonder they escape being split in the middle, or being broken backed, as 'tis called among seamen, when they are poised in the air upon the acute angle. For considering the length of the lever must needs have a strange effect upon it, yet we don't hear any ill accident happening thereupon. I mean, there's kind of like a lot to think about the way they do it. I think they're just kind of like using an angle to like kind of like a little paddle, maybe on the river or something like that. Is that what they're talking about? I might have to look that up, but I mean, I'm not really a water like into boats and stuff like that, so I'm not really too sure how it would work. But I think it might be important. I'm gonna have to take a look at that later, because that's an interesting way they must have done it. Obviously now this is all done with like mechanical engineering and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure they've upgraded the river since then. I mean, if you look at today, I think they're building a river in Germany that would connect to, I think, somewhere in the Mediterranean. Forget, something like that. Something that spreads from the Rhine or Danube. I can't remember which one. Watched a video on it a few years back. So, I mean, this is like generations of practicing river building and stuff like that. So, very, very interesting indeed. Excuse me. A little bloated this morning. We meet with no such waterfalls in the Grand Canal because the Emperor's barks, that are as large as our frigates, would not be raised by strength of arm, nay, and would be infallibly be split in the fall. All the difficulty consists in ascending back again upon these torrents, of which I have spoken, yet this is what they perform successfully, though not without trouble and some expense. The Great Canal is very useful for the transportation of grain and stuffs, which they fetch from the southern provinces to Peking. There are, if we may credit to the Chinese, 1,000 barks, from 80 to 100 ton, that make a voyage once a year, all of them freighted with the emperor, or all of them freighted for the emperor, without counting those of particular persons whose number is infinite. When these prodigious fleets set out, one would think they carried the tribute of all the kings of the East, and that one of these voyages alone was capable of supplying all Tartary with a sufficiency to subsist several years. Yet for all that Peking alone hath the benefit of it, and it would be as good as nothing, did not the province contribute besides the maintenance of the inhabitants of that vast city. Their ships for the sea service are not comparable with those of Europe, and their skill in navigation is very indifferent. Yet upon their rivers or canals they manage large vessels as big as ships, by a few hands with great dexterity. Their vessels are flat-bottomed, the head and stern square, but the forepart not quite so broad as the stern. They have a mainmast and a foremast. The foremast has a yard and a square sail. Their masts are not pieced like ours, one set on the head of the other, but are only one single tree. And that kind of makes sense because they're not like traveling on the ocean or anything like that, I'm assuming, because like the Englishmen, assuming that this book was written in English considering it's in the 1700s, they would have had like much larger sails and masts than these river traveling boats, so this seems consistent. Their sails are made of a thick mat, strengthened with laths or split cane at about 2 foot distance. They build little rooms or cabins upon the deck from one end to the other, and raised about 7 or 8 foot high, neatly painted and gilt within and without, and with all very commodious that takes off, or at least very much abates, the fatigues of long voyages. The mandarins or great officers frequently travel after this manner, and nowhere spend their hours more agreeably, for here they visit one another without that formality and ceremony required on shore, playing and passing away their time as if they were all one family. Freedoms are never taken by magistrates in their own jurisdiction. Okay. That's cool. Notwithstanding the sailing upon these canals is in general very pleasant, yet there are several rapid torrents on which they sail with utmost danger, the vessels being sometimes whirled about with an incredible swiftness for a considerable time, and are at last clashed in pieces upon the rocks. In the province of Fukien, for 8 to 10 days sailing, their vessels are in continual danger of perishing. There are so many cataracts or rocky straits that it is hardly possible for the boats to pass through without being clashed to pieces on one side or other. Every day almost some vessels or other is wrecked in these in these torrents. That sucks. But it often happens they split near the shore, and the passengers are by that means saved, though sometimes their vessels are clashed to pieces and the crews are buried in a moment. But the danger often proceeds from want of hands to manage their barks. For instead of 8 men, they had 15. All the violences of the streams would not be able to carry them away. So dexterous are these people at something, the force of the current of, I don't know, something, I can't read it, but it is common in China as well as other parts of the world to click something, the ship and cargo, rather than be at the expense of a sufficient number of hands to work a ship through so many difficulties that they are continually liable to. I don't really know what that means. Like, 'tis observable that there is hardly a city or village throughout the vast empire, more especially in the southern provinces, but has the conveniency of some navigable river, lake, canal, or arm of the sea, and that there are as many people nearly living upon the water as there are upon the land. Wherever there is a town upon the shore, there is another of boats upon the water, and some ports are so blocked up with vessels that it will take up several hours to get across them to land. These vessels are made commodious as their houses, and there are many born, live, and die in them. They likewise keep hogs, poultry, dogs, and other animals on board, in the same manner as if they were on shore. They just got like a rich culture and farm animals on their boats. That's crazy. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. You gotta think like some people like live on those boats, so I mean, it makes sense. And just having chicken, I mean, they just threw all their waste off the end of the river, so that river's kind of dirty, I guess, for sure. There are, besides these vessels, a great number of floats and timber perpetually going up and down the rivers and canals, which carry whole villages of people upon them. This timber is cut chiefly in the province of Stourgeon, which adjoins for India on the west. Their trees grow tall and straight, and are fit for all sorts of building, especially shipping. So these are in the mountains, right? That's cool. Stourgeon, so that's where they get their their wood. I'm assuming these are like large conifer trees. They just like forge together and make boats out of. The emperor reserves some for his private something, and sometimes sends 300 leagues of trees of a prodigious bigness, of which he makes pillars for his temple or other public buildings. Inhabitants also trade much in them, for having lopped off all the branches, they tie 80 or 100 together, and fall in so many such rows, one behind another, as reach almost a mile in length, and rise 2 or 3 foot above the water, upon which the people build wooden huts or cabins, where their timber merchant or his family and servants lie during the whole village, which is sometimes 3 or 4 months. Okay, so it's just talking more about like the nature of their trading and stuff like that, how they get their wood and use it. That's interesting. I honestly kind of like these little details, because then you hear about like Stourgeon, and they're known for like their big trees up there, so they're probably high up in the mountains that they gather, and then they take them downhill and then take them to the big cities and trade them off. So, interesting detail, honestly. There is likewise to be found in China several fountains that ebb and flow as regularly as the sea doth. Oh, cool. Whether they have a communication with the ocean by subterraneous passages, or whether occasioned by being impregnated in their passage through certain fars, I can't read that, by salts and sulfurs, and so may be apt to cause this fermentation, is a philosophical point to be discussed by those who make nature the chief subject of their inquiry. Or whether occasioned by... I kind of see what he's talking about here, but when he starts saying like impregnated by salts and sulfurs, I mean, is that saying it's like it's absorbing the water? I think that's what he's saying. He's like saying the salts and the sulfur is gonna hold the water together, and like keep them in like small lakes and stuff like that. And that there's a bunch of like I mean, it makes sense because over in like Tibet, they have some like lake beds and stuff like that, like salted lake beds. You can see like pictures and stuff like that of them, where they have like a lot of like legends and folklore behind them. And like this is where like the gods used to drink the water. This is like healing water and such. And there's a few people who've gone out there and kind of like Westerners, who have like really like talked about this stuff. But I mean, nowadays you're not really allowed to really go over there. They kind of block it off. A lot of stuff like such, not just rivers and stuff, but sites and just like nature, I don't even know, geographical, national forests, like not freaking national parks. I don't know if other countries call them that. Well, here in the States we call them that. So in any case, let's continue. Excuse me. Oh goodness. Some water. Since I have begun to speak of the different waters of China, I cannot pass over in silence the lakes and ponds that are almost everywhere to be found throughout the provinces. Those that are produced in the winter by the torrents from the mountains lay waste the fields, that render the country thereabouts during the summer barren, sandy, and full of flints. Those that arise from the springs are abounding in fish, and yielding considerable revenue to the emperor by the salt they afford. The something one of them is among the rest in the province of Kiamshi, in the middle whereof appears a small island, where abundance of people come to divert themselves during the excellent heats. There is a natural salt produced from this spring in great plenty, very white and of pleasant scent, which they continue to make all the summer long, with that success that the salt would be sufficient for the whole province, as it were as salt as that of the sea. Nevertheless, they commonly make use of it to season their meat withal. In the province of Honan, belonging to China, there is a sort of water, whether it be a lake or a fountain, is not certainly known, with that petrifies fish. What the Yo, what? Dude, what is this? Father Lecomte says he himself brought over crawfish that preserved their nature and figure, and was so far changed into stone that the claws and the body of them were very hard, solid, and little differing from little difference from stone. But the wonders of nature are not so very irregular to China, for the like petrifying quality of springs are to be met in several other parts near home. Nay, our own kingdoms are not exempt therefrom. Okay, I'm gonna end it here. Dude, that is like, that was a crazy, like a river that, like, they put the crawfish in the river, right? And then it turns into stone. I'm gonna read about that. That is crazy. But I'm going to end it here on, I'm not really sure what page this is. I can't read it because there's an overlay over what I'm looking at. So we're going to end it here on this paragraph and start right here. So really, really interesting stuff. A lot about the rivers transitioning to the mountains and lake beds. So really talking about some of the national parks and stuff like that, or what the geography, I guess. Really interesting stuff. And we'll continue in the next part.